Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of GCS Inclusion. My name's Gemma and I'm the guest host for today, and we'll be talking about team building with Orla Falcon.
Hi Gemma, hi everyone.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, not so bad. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate you taking the bit of time out and really diving into things with us, which would be great.
Great, it's my pleasure. I'm delighted to be here. Would it help if I give myself a little bit of an intro?
Yeah, that'd be brilliant, thanks.
Great, thanks Gemma. So as I said, my name is Orla Falcon. I am currently a Director of Operations at Bentley Systems, which is a software company. We have an office here in Dublin, but headquartered out of the US. And my career journey has been, I would say, rather than a very direct pathway, very much a series of twists and turns. But I've, over the years, kind of started out studying architecture, moved into information security space, and I was in the financial advisory space, completed my MBA a couple of years ago, and now I've made the move into software. But always really focused on, operations and technical teams, building teams either from scratch or from existing groups. Very passionate about people development and having kind of diversity in teams, and I really think it's a really powerful combination. So excited to be here today. So
No, and I completely agree, and it's great to kind of be able to push for that bit more now. If we start off, what would you feel is the benefit of building new team functions from existing teams then, from a DE&I perspective?
Sure, that's a really good question, Gemma. I think that when you pull together a team from an existing pool of candidates, you have the opportunity to both start something from scratch, but also leverage the knowledge you have of the people that you have. So at the start of January, I've been putting together a new operations function at Bentley for our customer success team. And it's been a really exciting journey. I've had the opportunity to really pull some of the best talent of the business coming from lots of different diverse backgrounds. And for anyone who works in operations or works with operations, you know that it's very much an umbrella group. You need a little bit of everything to be really effective. So having that diversity of skill and experience and mindset and background is really, really critical to help the team. So, I think there's that opportunity, and you bring with that pulling together of people across the business, you bring that kind of cultural consistency, you bring that experience, but it also is really important when you do that to, kind of do a gap analysis, trying to understand, what do we have today in terms of the team and what are we missing, because it's easier to pick the skills that are front of mind, but sometimes when it comes to diversity inclusion, you really need to take a step back and figure out, what are the key areas that we're not addressing, or the voices that are not in the room to help drive us forward and be a better team. So, I think for me, it's always a really enjoyable experience to be able to build that from the ground up. It's something I'm really passionate about, because I love to see when a team comes together and really gels, and you get that when you have that mix.
I think it's good that you're kind of not looking at a checklist there, but looking at the gaps that's within the business and where to build from that, which is great. Well, when building the team, what should management and leaders kind of be thinking about to do so?
I think sometimes diversity inclusion can be more talk rather than action. So you really need to be putting your money where your mouth is. And I think, we talk a lot about all the benefits that it brings to a team, but, it also brings a huge amount of benefit to a business as well. For example, we all know inherently that diverse teams have better outcomes for businesses. It, generally hits the bottom line. But more than that, I think it contributes to the overall trust within the organization, contributes to overall team morale. So I think having that first and foremost when you're building out your teams, and particularly building out management teams, is having that awareness that, you need that diversity at all levels. It needs to be distributed across the organization, and you need to be driving it. It just won't happen organically. You need to, build the right processes, build the right practices, and measure it. And it can't just be about vanity metrics. It has to be about the practices that go behind that, so saying that we have 30% diversity when maybe that 30% exists in one team or one function, that's
Yeah.
not really diversity. So I think it's being intentful through everything you do and not just kind of ticking a box.
Yeah, I think it's more the thought process behind it as well, that you're not saying, right, well, we need to have X amount of people from this background or this gender or things like that. It's getting the people in the door, giving them opportunity and going from there. The other thing I want to look at is the kind of idea of team building activities to increase the productivity then across the board. One of the things we did within our team recently was the zip lining, and it was something that it just encouraged everyone to get involved. It wasn't just all about work, but you had that moral spirit then between us that worked really well. Have you any kind of suggestions of what would work?
Yeah, and I've had the pleasure to work both for companies in Ireland where you have your team in situ, and then working kind of companies globally, and you think you need different kinds of approaches for that. So, I've seen what works really well, kind of like something like a cooking class where you get to experience, the food of other people's backgrounds. So I'm a big foodie, so I think food is universal, right? We all need to eat, but we all get joy out of eating something that's new and invigorating, and kind of brings us closer to other people culturally, I think. So for me, that's always been a really great team building activity. And then, looking at kind of more on a global scale, where I'm at the moment, Family Systems, we have a massive team globally distributed. So you have to think differently about how to be inclusive. And the business actually has a really proactive DE&I team, and they actually have like a book club. And I've really enjoyed that engagement. And each month the book is something, either someone's lived experience, and it could be gender related, it could be, cultural, it could be LGBTQI, it could be any different theme. But the idea is that it's kind of doing that reading together as a group and having that discussion, opens up doors for people to be able to have those conversations with teammates and to be able to understand, a different person's lived experience better. So I think that's, it's one way that's accessible for everybody. And I think the other one that I really enjoy is, we actually have this, we use Microsoft Teams, so we have this kind of channel where everybody contributes, and every now and then someone will throw in a question, which is like, share a photo today of what team means to you. And people throw in their photos, and it could be anything from like, here's a picture of me and my family, and we're a team, and this is why. And you get a little bit of snippet of their backstory and what it is that makes them driven and focused and what they're passionate about. Or maybe it's, a team in an office who are maybe meeting together for the first time in a long time. So it's been really, kind of invigorating to see that engagement from colleagues all across the world and seeing what that means to them. And so I think those kind of, looking for those options to be able to come together and connect with a common understanding, it's really critically important, whether it's in person or it's global. But it can be really, even the simplest things can be really impactful, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a nice way to kind of get to understand your colleagues' backgrounds, what their real interests are. But also what works well there is it can be global. It can be something so simple, yet everybody can get involved, not just the people that are in the office or local to each other, which is a nice way of doing it then.
Absolutely. And I think, sometimes when we're not in the office, as people will know for the last 2 years, you miss those little snippets of understanding who people are. We're so busy and we're flying from one thing to the next. So taking that time out to share a little bit of an insight into, what makes me me and what drives me, that really helps you understand the people you work with. And when you understand each other, you have trust. And you have trust, you have good outcomes.
Definitely. I even see the same myself. Like I tend to work remotely a lot just to work around family and kids. But when I come into the office, I might come in maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks. And even my colleagues might show me like one of them is big into his health and smoothies. And I get to kind of gauge how he goes about it. And it's a genuine interest in between the people, that it's not just about work. And sometimes team calls tend to take over work related stuff instead of getting to know each other. So it's nice to have that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all human. We need that contact, and that's so important. Yeah.
Definitely. Last question, and it's a big one. It's the idea of how can you ensure that D&I is in the front of minds for people then and teams?
Yeah, and I think this is it's an interesting question, because I think kind of comes back to what I was saying earlier on. It's about building that practice. So for me, it's not it's not kind of doing a training and putting that away. It's really about looking at everything you do as a company, how you operate, and how do you instill that mindset in people? How do you build those teams in a way that it's not something that you need to think about, but that is instinctive. I'm very data oriented, and I do feel that it's part of the solution. That it's not about any metrics, but it's about being really articulate on where you want to go and what kind of business do you want to be. And I think I read an interesting study. It's a couple of years back, but it's about how we perceive representation. This particular study was focused on gender, but I think I would be very surprised if it wasn't applicable to other different lived experiences, with this perception that when I think it's around 17% of the population in the room is women, it's typically perceived as being a 50-50 balance, but obviously that's not true. And so there's this unconscious bias that we all carry. And if you kind of look around you and say, yeah, we feel like we have hit the right notes when it comes to diversity, unless you actually dig into that and dig into the numbers, you can end up, I think, assuming and really not addressing the opportunity there to make your workplace a better organization. So, I absolutely think if you're not measuring it, you're not going to make it happen. So for me, that's a really critical part of it.
And it's definitely, I think, looking at the organization as a whole rather than just in certain teams we might be able to tick them boxes, but it has to be everyone together. You have to all be on kind of the same mindset for it to really, really work well. I think that kind of touches with one of the questions Betty has asked there. How would you recommend creating more connections between the different departments when building these teams to kind of bridge that divide?
It's a good question. I think for me, I think it's building a shared understanding or a shared common purpose. When I kind of step into a new role, I always like to go and meet people, go and understand what do they do. And when I was earlier on in my career, I used to always be like, well, don't take time out of people's day and ask them stupid questions about what it is that they're focused on, what are their priorities. But I kind of came to realize that actually people love to talk about what they're doing. If you can get them talking and you can understand what are they trying to achieve, you can figure out how you can marry up what you're both looking to do. And I think if you can create that sense of shared purpose or shared collaboration, that's the foundation. Once you have that in place, then even when conflict arises or differing priorities, you can always go back to that point and say, well, we're both here because we want a good outcome for our user. We're both here because we want a good outcome for the business. And if you can always bring it back to that point, I think it makes that collaboration seamless. It's not easy, but it's for me, I find that when you have that foundation, those team collaborations are the ones that are so effective.
Definitely. I think that goes without saying for any relationship. It's kind of looking at the key elements of why we're doing this together. And if you are working together for the same goal, things work out. There's always going to be conflict in different areas, but we get to the right point in the end.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of a mindset I try and, I say the disciplines of practice I'm trying to implement in my own mind. Just always think about what's the best possible reason that people are doing the things they do, and it's the same thing, we all have a shared common purpose. We all have a shared common way we want to live our lives. And if we can really drill down to that, it lets the differences kind of melt away and, you can really connect on a human level.
Brilliant. And I suppose last question there would be, have you any thoughts that you'd like to share with everyone watching then?
That's it. I hadn't thought of any thoughts to share, but I guess I think for me it's there's a daily practice in how we go about with a team building and how we go about instilling those values in everything we do, you're never going to get it perfect. You're always going to, err, or, it's accepting that everyone has a natural bias. Everyone has, something that they need to, you don't necessarily overcome it, but you need to be aware of it. And so if you think of it as a daily practice, it's something that you can continually kind of bring your mind back to. I would think that'll lead you the right way, right? You're kind of making sure that you're following the right set of values. So yeah, I think that's, for me, it's a practice. Bear with it and keep trying and keep building on that.
Yeah, I think things like this, they do take that kind of conscious effort. But if you're making that effort, it makes such a difference in the long run. So hopefully everyone's working towards the same thing there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us today, and we will continue to touch base then in future. But thank you very much for it.
My pleasure. Thanks, Gemma. Thanks, everyone.
No worries. Chat to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.